Hello, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini. Slight technical hiccup there. Maintaining so many things at the same time is not one of my high skills. Okay, so we're in the book of Micah. We're continuing in verse 8. And last time I had said I would give some more thought to verse 7. I gave it some more thought. Especially the last clause. Because enigmatic sayings like this are always very interesting to me. For she gathered it of the hire of an harlot, and they shall return to the hire of an harlot. There's a back and forth thing here that obviously is being played upon by Micah. And what is it? The hire of a harlot are the wages of a harlot. It's what the harlot gets paid for doing what she does. And in the Old Testament, that, of course, one second. In the Old Testament, you would not bring an offering into the house of the Lord of the wages of an harlot or of the hire of a dog, which is a male prostitute. Meaning you weren't supposed to, and that goes really stolen, that was not acceptable. The things that we sacrificed were supposed to be the byproducts of our own labor. And so there's several ways that this could be taken. One, she gathered it of the hire of an harlot, meaning by her whoredoms, she gathered the money together to bring the graven images to make them. There's a cost associated with it. And notice the word hire is mentioned 3 times in this verse. And I believe it's a technical term, according to Strong's, that means the hire of an harlot. But then the word harlot is definitely added here as a secondary word. So I don't know what why that would be necessary. So they gathered it of the hire of an harlot, and they shall return to the hire of a harlot. And I guess the very plain meaning on the surface is it will be used, what was used, it's going to be used again to purchase the product of a harlot. So, it's like that full circle thought that it was gathered by the hire of a harlot, and then that's going back to pay harlots. Except I'm not sure exactly how that plays out. Like what that would mean on the ground. I mean, it comes to mind passages like in Isaiah that he that killeth the sword shall be killed with the sword. And he that receives the hires of whores shall be paying the hires of whores. And the one thing that occurs to my mind is that the graven images are beaten to pieces, and the hires thereof burn with the fire. I think this is, thank you, Lord, for bringing this together in my mind. Okay, this is what I think it means. The hires thereof, when you would make an idol, it would be adorned with all kinds of gold and silver and precious stones. They would put that all over it. And so, why would people break up their idols? You might think it's like, well, it's a reformation, or the Assyrians are coming in and doing it. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is this. One second here. Before the Assyrians come, they start panicking. And so they look at around them and say, we need money. So they beat apart their idols. They take all the gold and silver off of them that they got through the hire of their whoredoms to hire another kind of whore, which is probably a euphemism for mercenaries or other, to pay off some outside force to come help protect them. So they would strip so in a sense, they're not stripping their idols because they think, oh, the Lord, we don't want to, these are all, I mean, there's some of that in Hezekiah, but not in all places in Samaria. This is something that they would do, is they would just gather all the gold of the city. In fact, I forgot under which king exactly, but in order to buy off either the Assyrian or the Babylonians, they went into the temple and they stripped all the gold off the temple of God to try to pay them off, to go away and not bring the destruction upon them that they were threatening. So I think that's a fairly good interpretation of that verse. I should have said that this study begins at chapter 1, verse 7. As I had said, I would go over that again. Verse 8, therefore I will wail and howl. I will go stripped and naked, and will make a wailing like the dragons, and a mourning as the owls. And the wailing of the dragons, the word dragons is disputable that that's what it meant. At times I've said, even in my says, well, why not dragons? Let's interpret this as dragons. Because, but I do think, like, let's just say it does mean dragons. Though usually people say it means jackals. Okay. Like, because there's another passage which says they snuffed up the wind like dragons. And that's interpreted to be like, panting. They snuff up the wind. The behavior of a dog. So sometimes in the context you can get, and then the wailing, of the dragons could be seen as the howling of the wolves or of jackals or of other canine creatures in the wilderness, and the hooting of the owls, obviously, whoo, whoo. They both have a sense of and here's the thing, if I was going to interpret this as being the fearsome creature, the dragon of mythology, it would be definitely more, his wailing would be, I assume, a fearsome sound, right? That's why from the context of this, you can figure, well, it's probably not talking about the wailing of the mythological dragon, because there is the mythological dragon, like the devil, the dragon, is likened to the dragon, that old serpent, the serpentine dragon. But in the New Testament, that's a word that very specifically means a dragon, drakon in Greek. In the Hebrew here, it's not entirely clear, or it wasn't to the King James translators. So when you look at the context of a passage like this, it's easy to understand when you say, well, the mourning of the owls, hoo, hoo, and you have the wailing of the jackals, ho. It's a very melancholy sound. They're both very melancholy, and it would be jarring to have some sort of fearsome cry of, because the mythological dragon is not known for the melancholy nature of his howl. But certainly we can see of the idea of a dog, the sad sound of a dog howling. It's got a very melancholy sound. And that's what he's saying. I will wail and howl. I will go stripped and naked. Going stripped and naked was a sign of mourning, meaning it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to walk around absolutely without clothes on, but stripped down to the barest things, and maybe even naked. But a lot of times, I say that not totally naked necessarily true, but divested of all the, you could go around in your underwear and not be naked, But he might, prophets often did things that were very demonstrative. And it's supposed to mean, a lot of times that means because when people would be taken captive, they would be utterly humiliated. They would have their clothes stripped off of them. Think about like the Nazi concentration camps, Auschwitz and all that. They stripped the Jews naked, before they slew them. And it was a very humiliating, and also it puts you in a very vulnerable position. When people are naked, they're vulnerable. That's what in the Garden of Eden, they opened their eyes and they saw that they were naked. They knew that they were naked, and their nudity is a sign of their vulnerability. And also the vulnerability. If I can see my own vulnerability, that I know all about your vulnerability. If I know what hurts me, I know what hurts you. Because I know we are the same. We're both human. You know, if a reed shoved under my fingernail hurts, then I know I can hurt you like that. That's where the knowledge of evil comes to play. Because just as Paul says in the book of Romans that the Gentiles are law unto themselves, because they know, whilst excusing or accusing one another, they show a form of the law. So if I say you shouldn't, if I say you stole my, why did I think of bingo card? That's a weird thing to have pop in your head. You stole my car. And I'm obviously showing that I understand right from wrong by saying that that I think it's wrong to steal a car. Okay, stripped and naked, people led away captive were often stripped naked. And I just noticed. There we go. I'm on the screen. It wasn't centered. So, yeah. So prophets would often go stripped and naked in order to be demonstrative of, you're going to be carried away into captivity. And you're going to go, as I have walked naked, so shall you be stripped naked and carried away into captivity by the king of Assyria. Things like that go on. It would be like, why is that guy naked? That was to attract attention. These days we have other ways to attract attention, though that always is one that, gets people looking. They're like, what? But the prophets did some strange things. Verse 9. One second, I'm going to take a sip here. Make it 2. For her wound is incurable. For it has come unto Judah, he has come to the gate of my people, even to Jerusalem. And her is Jerusalem. Because, one of the context, if we go back, we'll see we were talking about Judah and Samaria, and then Jerusalem specifically. Her wound is incurable because it is, the infection, the idolatry, the wound. It's not just idolatry, by the way. There's a lot more wrong, and Micah's going to go into details. But you can trace a lot of the wrong things that are going wrong in their society back to their lack of attention to the God that gave them the righteous law. By not honoring their God, by not giving him the proper weight in their lives, not measuring God in how important that really is. And you see that with nominal Christianity. When we are nominal Christians, our children, and a lot of times parents are nominal Christians, and they sort of, at the same time, are imposing a kind of, they want their children to be really Christian, or maybe not nominal Christians, but I don't want to get into specifics of sort of situations that, it's like, is that really how common that is? But what I'm saying is, if we don't give our religion and our God, if we don't put it in its proper place of sanctity and importance in our lives, everything is going to suffer. And ultimately the whole society is going to suffer. Because if God isn't that important to us, then how can any one right thing we do be very important either? He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful in that which is greatest, the Lord Jesus said. And the reverse, he that is unfaithful in the most important things in life is going to be unfaithful in all kinds of little things. You know what I mean? That's for the unfaithful. Because you can be faithful to the most important things. and then be lacking details. And that's how it is for a lot of Christians in their walk. He that is faithful in the great things, it is sometimes, like the least things are not so obvious. But if you have someone who's got even the little things down, that's what Jesus is saying. If someone is faithful in the small things, and that's not necessarily in the details of life, they're very likely going to be faithful in the big things. And people who are faithless in the big things, they're not attentive to the things of God. They're not mindful of God's kingdom. Their hearts are not directed towards our Lord on a daily basis. They are not turning to Him in their need. They are not looking to Him for guidance. They're not calling on the Holy Spirit to guide their path. Where are they going to end up? Well, they're not going to end up where they need to be. And so, the corruption of this idolatry, it starts off in the hinterlands with people like, well, Jerusalem's too far away, and I need God to help me right here. Or I need God to help me, and last time I didn't get what I wanted. Like I said, even though I'm inattentive to all the things of God until I need something. That's a step above nominality, or having a Christianity that is nominal is having a Christianity that is covetous. That is, you only come to God for, I sometimes, when I catch myself praying about the necessities of life, and I think, no, I kind of rebuke myself. I'm like, you always take care of me. I'm like, help me understand the scriptures. Help me teach well. That's what I really need help in. And then, there have been times I just always prayed that I need work to do to stay alive. And that's all I want. I just make that known, but it's not like something I say, God, make it fall out of the sky for me. I take it for granted that we are to struggle in life. That it's not like, that's part of the deal. Like Paul says, we should all work with our own hands. And I said also that that's not necessarily literal. You can be, I don't want to choose lawyer. But certainly a lawyer can be seen as working with their hands. I mean, they're doing their job. It's an analogy. Meaning you're not living off the labor of other people, but you're providing some sort of valuable service out of your own capabilities or labor. Her wound is incurable. It is come unto Judah. He is come to the gate of my people. He, I think here refers to the enemy, the Assyrians. And it starts here. He has come to Jerusalem. That is a prophecy. It's not happened yet. Prophets often say things are happened that have not yet happened. But he has seen the vision that he has come. The Assyrian is coming to the gate of Jerusalem. But he says in this sense, he is come. And he knows that this is coming. And then he goes through this section of the prophet, which is a very common theme you see, in Isaiah and other prophets. I keep forgetting that mute button exists. But where the prophet basically goes and names like a bunch of towns and then says a bunch of stuff. And I don't get into the nitty-gritty of it. Let's just look at the first verse, and then I'll read the whole thing, and then we'll talk about the details. But I want to give this to you ahead of time so you can listen to it and understand, so it doesn't just come off as a list of towns, and because it is a section of it here right to the end of the chapter. It says, "Declare it not at Gath, weep not at all. In the house of Aphrah, roll thyself in the dust." And I what you're seeing is, and it gets more clear, like in verse 11, where it says, "Thou inhabitant of Saphir, having the shame naked." The place names in Hebrew sound like words that create a play on words. So like, declare ye it not at Gath could be, it's kind of like, sounds like tell ye it not at Telltown. Weep not at Weeptown, you know. At Dusttown, roll yourself in the dust. You know, something like that. That's a very crude explanation. But let it suffice that in Hebrew there's a play on words happening. That part of it, that sort of part of it, I'm not gonna break that down for you because I'm not a scholar of Hebrew. I have a very superficial knowledge. I use the tools that are available to English speakers to get a little bit under the surface of the King James, because the King James definitely needs that kind of attention. But I do not, get into the nitty-gritty. If you want to get into a deeper study of that, there are definitely resources available from very competent scholars who can tell you all about the plays on words. And it's funny because I looked into that. I looked at that just before I started, and I thought it was funny because I was like, hey, actually with the part about the harlots, I wanted to look up. I was like, okay, I didn't have anything at the time before the study, and I was like, I got this Bible Hub, right? And I've showed that before, and why not show it right now, right? The Bible Hub. I'm not paid by them or nothing. I think they're probably non-profit or whatever, right? And I'll bring that up on screen. We got Bible Hub, right? That looks beautiful. It's supposed to look like that. And I was looking at the verse about the hire of the harlot, and I'm like, oh, are there any commentaries, anything to say? And this is, moments before I get started, or a couple minutes, 5 minutes or so. And so I'm like, I'll look at these commentaries. I hate commentaries, and I do not consult them for my studies because I like to let the Holy Spirit teach me. But I thought I wasn't getting anything. I'm like, I want to see what they say. And I looked, and it's funny, and they just went right over it. It was, at least in the commentary I looked at, I only looked at one. They just went right over that part and did not talk at all about the hire of a harlot. I guess I was just supposed to understand that. And sometimes maybe that's the case. Maybe I'm just dense, or maybe I'm making it too difficult. But in the meantime, as I was looking at that, I saw this about the play on words. I'm like, yeah, I know, I remember that from Isaiah. And I thought, well, look, you can go to Bible Hub and look in the commentaries. And the one I looked at was the expositor's commentary, which I thought was funny because I consider, what I do is expositional Bible study. I read it and I make exposition about what it means. And I looked at the notes and I'm like, they don't have anything here about what the prophecy means. They only have stuff in here about Gath and what the sort of like helping you understand some of the other things. There's not a lot of that. And I'm sure some commentaries do have more, at least I assume they do. I don't recommend commentaries per se, but this is a commentary. So, I don't know. I'm not afraid of what someone might read in there. It's not like I've got a bunch of students to be jealous over. I do this because it's what I need to do. It's what God has given me to do. I just need to do a streaming study. And I don't really need anyone to listen to it. It's actually what I need to do. It's always been my thought about, well, I need at least one person, but she's always listening. But it's always what I felt the Lord wanted me to do that I was following. It was not what I was trying to create. God is trying to do whatever he wants to do. I only want to obey what he is calling me to. And let's not digress any further in that. Okay, so let's look at this. Understanding that there are plays on words happening, but we're going to look at just the general meaning. Verse 10. Declare ye it not at Gath, weep ye not at all. In the house of Aphrah, roll thyself in the dust. Pass ye away, thou inhabitant of Saphir, having thy shame naked. The inhabitants of Zaanan came not forth in the mourning of Bethezel. He shall receive of you his standing. For the inhabitant of Maroth, waited carefully for good, but evil came down from the Lord unto the gate of Jerusalem. O thou inhabitant of Lachish, bind the chariot to the swift beast. She is the beginning of the sin to the daughter of Zion, for the transgressions of Israel were found in thee. Therefore shalt thou give presents to Moresheth Gath. The houses of Achzib shall be a lie to the kings of Israel. Yet I will bring an heir unto thee, O inhabitant of Mareshah. He shall come unto Adullam, the glory of Israel. And that's the end of the chant. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yeah. Make thee bald and poll thee for thy delicate children. Enlarge thy baldness as the eagle, for they are gone into captivity from thee. Okay, and we will cover all that stuff before we're done. And we're at that. And before we go into it in depth here, or at least to try to understand, I'm not saying that it's going to be incredibly deep, because it's actually very simple. But we'll look at the simple details so we can understand. Because I remember when I was young, I remember I heard, I had a Bible. It was actually the Living Bible. It was called The Book. It was a new marketing method for that particular, it's not a translation, it's a paraphrase. And I wanted to, and I also had a King James Bible. And I remember at the beginning of Isaiah in the book, as it was called, it said, Isaiah must have been one of Jesus' favorite prophets because he quoted it so often. And I thought, well, I want to read it if it's one of Jesus' favorites. I mean, I'd read the Gospels. I'd read other parts of the New Testament. The Old Testament was kind of alien, and I was very fascinated with it, other than I'd read the Genesis, Exodus, and then I usually got bogged down in Leviticus because it's very boring, quite frankly. It's like reading a legal code. Anyone ever sit down for pleasure and read the legal code of the United States of America? You know, so Paul, it is boring. It is tedious. And they shall take the sacrifice. You know, I mean, it's worth reading through once, which eventually I did. But, and there are definitely gems in there of the law because it helps you understand the righteous justice. And it's important because people will say things about what the Old Testament taught, and they will not really know what they're talking about. So it's worth a look. But I had this book, and I wanted to understand the prophet Isaiah. I wanted to understand, and I opened it up and I read it, and I couldn't understand. I was like, "What is this talking about? The ox knows his owner, the ass his master's crib, but my people do not know. My people do not understand." And I was like, I was 19, and I thought, I have no idea what that means. Like I literally was looking at the words, and though now it seems so simple to me, and it's not that hard to understand but from a completely ignorant person just picking up the Bible and trying to read it. And there was no there was no internet when I was 19. I mean, there was an internet, but nobody had really gotten into that yet. It was just about to start. It was 1992 and 93. And so there was, you know, I guess I could have gone to a library or something. I don't know. But I was immediately flummoxed. I was like, no idea. I looked at the King James, and I'm like, this is even worse. Hold on a second. And then, and so later on when I found someone to explain the Bible to me, it was very important. And so I like to explain the scriptures so people can understand what they're reading and know what they're looking at. Because it's not like this should be Chinese, you know, to an English speaker. It should be intelligible. And we will try to understand. So at the halfway point, I will say, if there are any questions about what's been taught so far, you can always post them in the chat. If you have questions, like of a like outside the topic of Micah, you can send your questions to questions@oraclesofgod.org, and I will do, at some point, like I said, I will make time, either on a Saturday or Sunday. I want to start picking one of those days on each weekend, depending on my schedule. Say Saturday some weeks, Sunday the other. And just going over questions. I may even just make up questions or just have topical things to talk about. And I will do so. But if I have questions from listeners, I will definitely address those. And I have an email account. I check this specifically. These are specifically questions to be covered on the live stream. So keep that in mind. If you want to contact me through email, I think that's possible through YouTube, through business inquiries, as they're called. But you can also find me on my website, oraclesofgod.org, where I have hundreds of hours of Bible studies and songs and writings. And I say and more here, but I'm not sure if there's anything more than that. Information about other things, I don't know, about Bible study schedules, what I'm doing musically. You know, there's information there. News, history. It's a website I've managed since 1998. It's the 20th anniversary of oraclesofgod.org. Oh, all right. And of course, subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies, this channel on YouTube. And when you subscribe, click on the little bell, because that will give you notifications whenever we go live. So if we have a Sunday special or a Saturday special, you'll get a little notification in your YouTube notification up in the upper right hand corner where the little bell is, and you'll see a little thing pop up there, a number or something, and then you click on it and it'll say Line by Line Bible Studies is streaming live right now. So that's very useful if you want to keep up with that aspect of it. And I'll look in the chat real quick here. No questions. I don't think there's really any question to ask at this point. So, declare it not at Gath. Now, Gath would be the Philistines. Now, these cities, in whether you're looking at Isaiah and the similar passages where the king of Assyria is coming to Jerusalem, the cities named are usually in geographically, they go from geographically distant to closer and closer and closer. And it's supposed to inspire in the mind of the hearer in Israel this idea of this impending doom, that he is coming. He's like, don't tell Gath. And then he goes, and what about the house of Aphrah? And you're getting closer and closer and closer as you go through all these towns till you're at the gates of Jerusalem, at the towns that are closest, the suburbs. So again, the reason why wouldn't you declare it at Gath? Well, Gath is Philistines, the enemies of Israel. Historically, they were the enemies. And pause. I mean mute. They were historically the enemies. There was a long history of animosity between the Philistines and the Israelites. And it's saying, don't tell it to them, because hey, sometimes when I've had trouble or injuries and stuff, I don't announce it on my website for my enemies to hear, and I've got enemies, God knows. People who wish me harm. I don't want them to rejoice. I don't want to give them pleasure. And sometimes I think maybe I should tell, all, so my enemies can exult over me, and they can blast, they can blast. Oop, wrong button. And they can speak evil of my God. Maybe I should let them say, where is his God now? I knew my version of Jesus was right, and that guy, he came after our beloved teacher or whatever. It usually has to do with my history with Arnold Murray that I get, let's say, ill wishers. But anyways, this is no big deal. So declare not at Gath, weep ye not at all. I do think, because I thought it might be say, don't go crying to, to Weep Town or whatever. I think there's something in this clause, weep not at all, that's missing. But don't weep. Because he had just said, I will weep. I will weep, and I think is what's saying, don't go crying to the people out there, maybe. On the house of Aphrah, roll yourself in the dust. Because that's, again, sackcloth and ashes, rolling yourself in the dust, going naked. These were all sort of different ways to express that deprivation was coming. Deprivation was coming, and the prophet wanted everyone to understand, that the enemies of Israel are going to be rejoicing. And, again, he said, I'm going to howl and weep. I'm going to make a melancholy sound. So this is a little bit jarring here. So I think it might be, what did, I'm not going to look up. I'm not going to go further than that. You can explore it a little further. But I'm just pointing that verse out to you. That may not, in English, that may not be conveying the full sentence. And if we didn't use the King James, and we can look at another translation. I don't mind that. Let's quickly bring up another. Let's see what, people say, well, which version of the Bible, if not the King James, and I usually say, well, the American Standard Bible, or I suppose the New American Standard Bible. I don't know about the new, but I don't usually recommend the NIV because I don't know. Some people say there's some controversial things about it. I've never been into it. I know that when I've looked into the NIV, I haven't much liked it, and that for me is always, that is always a concern. If I find something, what's going on? If I don't like it, that's good enough for me. So what do they say? Tell ye not in Gath, weep not at all. So they think it should be translated exactly like that. So, well, there's the evil. Okay, so we can transition. This is just me trying to navigate the software that enables me to do this. Okay, so that's a dead end. I'm not going to go to 100 different translations because if weep, do not weep. Don't tell it to Gath, don't weep. Yeah, well, maybe, never let him see a cry, so to speak, that sort of thing. Pass ye away, thou inhabitant of Saphir, having thy shame naked. Saphir, I looked it up, it meant beauty. And so there's an obvious play on words. Pass away, beauty, having your shame naked. The shame and the nakedness, the exposing of, beauty is often wrapped in adornments. It is made, and the word usually comes from some idea of orderliness, of adornment. Like putting on clothes and ordering the hair and ordering this and putting everything in order. And even the word we have, cosmetics, comes from the Greek cosmos, which is the world as ordered. Cosmos is what it means. And so, it is setting things in order the way the world has been set in order. It's orderly. It's sensible. And that's being contrasted with the chaos. The king of Assyria is coming. Roll yourself in the dust. Don't tell our enemies. The inhabitant of Saphir, run away. Run away naked, in shame. And the inhabitant of Zaanan came not forth in the mourning of Bethezel. There's the mourning of Bethezel, but they didn't come. And he shall receive of you his standing. And I believe that meant I'm the wrong version. Where's King James? That the word standing is what I'm interested in. Standing ground. Support, yeah. And to receive, it means to take. See, and so I guess what it's saying is, in the evil that befell Bethezel, Zaanan came not forth. And now, I suppose that means, in a sense of like maybe come to the defensive, perhaps? And then the Assyrian, I assume, is the he. Is it Bethezel? It's hard to tell sometimes. And that would be very, context dependent. Maybe the Zaanan should have helped Bethezel in their time of trouble. And because they did not, the help they could have given Bethezel ended up being given to the king of Assyria. Or, no, then it doesn't make sense. Like that if he cannot be Bethezel, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I think that actually is kind of what I had said a moment ago as the interpretation, or a good interpretation, or as good. These are not areas of critical understanding, but we will try to understand them as best we can. The point is, the Assyrian is coming, and bad things happen when we neglect God. When the society neglects God, bad things happen. People become corrupt. Their wound is incurable. It goes deep to the heart of the civilization, Judah itself, and Jerusalem. The corruption has come even to Jerusalem, and therefore the Assyrians must come to Jerusalem. And when you let the devil in, he will search out your every crack and crevice till he is fully corrupted and you're diseased. You've got the disease, so you've been penetrated by the enemy through every weak place, through every spot of vulnerability. He will come in and take from you all the good things that you had, all the health. I'm using the body of the analogy. There's an analogy in the book of Isaiah where it talks about the body and how the whole thing has become sick. And it's like that. When we are not attentive to God, we become sick in a spiritual sense. But that's manifested in the outward corruption of our individual behavior and of the society as a whole. And the only fix for it, a lot of times Christians want to fix society by passing laws. They want to get control of the Supreme Court and make everything that's immoral illegal and all that. And all that means is that you'll just have people fighting against you more and more strongly to make their iniquity legal again. It happened like with prohibition. They tried to prohibit alcohol, and it just resulted in a lot of organized crime and people pushing back. You don't accomplish that through, you accomplish it through cultural change, through convincing people that they shouldn't do something. Convincing them that, that righteous behavior is in their best interest, or that, you have to change society, but you can't, society is not best managed from the top down any more than an economy is best managed from a top down. We don't need, we don't need socialist morality enforcement any more than we need socialist economic enforcement. We don't want the government to regulate the prices of everything and regulate every business and be involved in every transaction. And you don't want that in the moral realm either. And that can be seen in the way that, when the left and when people start trying to regulate, what is acceptable to say? What is acceptable speech? Like you say the wrong thing in our society. If you're in a job with a big company, they'll enforce the restrictive speech codes. They find out you say things that are inconvenient truth, or inconvenient truth. It's a funny choice. Or you say something insensitive to some racial or ethnic group. Not that I advocate. There I am. I'm protecting myself lest someone say I I have some insensitivity. But, I have insensitivity to different people. I'm not always sensitive to everyone's concern. It seems like a bit much that we have to walk through life constantly walking on eggshells for everyone, every little minority group. And it's like, is that a friend? And can we be friends if you have to always like watch what you say around me? Like every single idle word. Yeah, men shall give account of every idle word. But on the other hand, some things are not necessary to account for. And I got off on a tangent. But yeah, it has to do with like we want solutions. The way to change society is to start with yourself. If we all as individual Christians start improving our walk and following the Lord more zealously, with more attention, giving Him the proper gravity, if I as one individual do that, I may inspire others, and that's the best way to do it, because it's genuine. It's not something being imposed from the top down. God doesn't impose Himself like that on us. How did you hear the gospel? Did the government come along and tell you it was time to start believing? Sometimes parents do that. They make a very strong push against their children, like, even though they totally believe in Jesus, like, will you commit your life to Christ? And the kids are like, yeah, Dad, sure. They want them to make some sort of commitment so that they can feel assured that their children are saved. And sometimes people push too hard. I like things to come out of the heart of the individual. A strong commitment needs to come from within the individual. It's like, I can't. If I push someone to strongly commit, do you like it when you go into a car dealership? And thank God I've never been in a car dealership for the past, I think it's been over 20 years since I had to go to a car dealership for a car. I prefer to deal with individuals. You ever go to a car dealership and get the hard sell? Did you find that you enjoyed that? Do you like having someone pushing you to commit to something? You need to commit, well, I might not be here tomorrow, or whatever they say, Pushing. I don't enjoy that. So, why would we push the gospel like that? It's all right to push the gospel in its right way. We do push, we do press. Like doing this study is my form of pushing, and I'm not making apologies for it, but I'm not going to force anyone to listen. But if they listen, they're going to hear something forceful. Call people to commit, call people to give God His due, and to make the world a better place through making themselves better people. And so, let's return to verse 12. And 11 we covered. And I want to look back. We've not at all. Yeah, I covered all the difficult places and all the. Yeah, I said something. I don't want to skip over anything. I'd like to be careful, and I don't want to. If I don't understand something, I at least want to tell you. Like I'm looking at that right now, and I don't understand it. Like the weep not at all. I'm not precisely sure how that should be interpreted in the context. I went too far. For the inhabitant of Marath waited carefully for good. They were waiting for good. But evil came down from the Lord to the gate of Jerusalem. Again, we've gotten closer and closer. They waited for good, but evil came. That's a theme you see in different books of prophecy. They want good things, but evil comes. But didn't Jesus say, what man is there of you that if his son asks bread, will he give him a stone? Or if he asks a fish, will he give him a serpent? It says, if you therefore, being evil, know how to give good things to your children, how much more shall your Father in heaven give good things to those that ask Him? And that is true. So what does this mean? They're waiting for good. Well, good is relative. I have an opinion of what is good. Like, let's say I'm a murderous, horrible person, right? And I think, well, getting away with murder is good for me. Whereas me being brought to justice would be seen as good by others. That's why I try to tell people. It's like, I did a study called God is Not Fair. Because to some people, they'll never think he was fair. Because they have a skewed perspective on what fairness is. And good. We wanted good. We wanted to be rescued. We wanted to get away with ignoring God and then be saved anyways. We wanted to just, we expected good things, even though we did all the things that God said would bring evil. If we do all the things that God says brings evil, why are we sitting around expecting good to come? Let's do evil that good may come. And that's right in the New Testament. Let us sin the more that grace may abound. I thought if I sinned more, good things would happen. I was waiting for good. But evil came from God. Go figure. I am persuaded that all things work together for good, and that nothing can separate me from the love of God, and that everything, even the evil in the world, even bad things that happen to me, and I've had bad things happen. Nothing that horrible. I haven't suffered to death for resisting sin. But that could be in the cards for me. I don't know what the future may bring, right? But that's the whole point, is that you want to be ready to meet whatever challenge is coming. Whether it's the end of the world or just the end of America, the end of Western civilization. I mean, you don't know what's coming. I'm an optimist. I have 8 children, so I want to be optimistic. But in my optimism, I prepare for the worst things. And for me, that's always like things that would tear me away from God, things that would try to destroy my faith and take me away from the resurrection which has been promised me. Those are the things that I am, that I don't want to. That's the evil I definitely want to avoid. But as far as like injury to my body, the loss of my home, I don't want to lose my home, but these are things that I don't want to I want to be able to endure them. And whatever the Lord may bring, I want to be able to endure it. Because oftentimes to achieve great things in the Lord sometimes requires great sacrifice. It's, salvation is by grace and through faith. But it's not all I'm interested in, I mean, I hope that we all aspire to something a little bit beyond, like, I just want to be saved. Christ laid down his life, and I'm sure glad of that. And what is the least I can do? Yeah. What is the least I can do to take advantage of that? What is the very least I can do to inherit that? Is that the attitude we have? That's terrible. What are the minimum requirements? That kind of thought. What's the minimum? What's the least I can do to be saved? I'm not saying that's even the right way to think about it. But when people start thinking along those lines, it's not good. There's nothing I can do to be saved. God saves me. But in that he has saved me, I want to do everything. Everything I can do to be a part of it. I don't know. It seems to me natural. It's like, wow, I've entered into a kingdom. What can I do to help? How can I be useful? I see all kinds of analogies and stories in the New Testament. Occupy till I come. And the guy had a bunch of talents and he made a bunch more. And the guy who had just one, he buried it in the earth and he got in big trouble. There was a wedding and people were putting on the right wedding garments and somebody didn't put on the right wedding garments and they were thrown out into outer darkness. I don't want to be pitched out of the kingdom. And people who take it lightly do get pitched out. Make no doubt about it that those who take it lightly will be thrown out. It doesn't, we are to have faith. We're not saved by works, but there are certain people who come in with a pretense of faith, and they look like they have faith, but the things of God are far from their hearts. They are going to be thrown out. They're not going to enter into his kingdom. They're not going to enter into eternal life. But he's going to throw them out, and they're going to be speechless. People expect good from God, and they're going to be shocked at the evil he brings upon them. Because they have done, sometimes bad things happen to me, and I'm like, well, all things are working together for good. What is this calamity going to do for my benefit? It's going to benefit me in some way. And that's what I start looking for. Not long ago, I hit a deer, and I was like, at first you can't be happy when the front end of your car is busted up and the radiator's leaking and it looks like there might be, more than just superficial damage. But in very short order, someone suggested, are we cursed? And then, no, of course not. Of course not. I'm never cursed. It's like that deer might have saved me from something much worse. And I took it as an analogy. Look, at my car got a dent in it, and the radiator was busted. In a few days, I had that fixed. I replaced the radiator, pulled the front end apart, pulled the frame back straight, using a winch in my barn. I got it all straightened out, fixed. The air condenser for the air conditioning wasn't even breached, even though it was all bent up. And I jumped up and down on it and made it flat. And I repaired the car. It's a little uglier. It's ugly, whatever, but not that bad. You have to look at it to notice. It's not something that like jumps out at you. And I'm not a big superficial person. I wax my cars to take care of them. You should. It's we should take care of the things we've been given. But that deer was wasted. And to me, the things that get in my way are destroyed. I only regret that I didn't take it home and carve it up and eat its flesh. It seemed like that would be the appropriate response. That which stands in my way will be devoured. And the things that harm me, I can deal with. I'm still alive. My car is still running. With no noticeable change in performance. Because it was just, there was some damage done, but nothing I couldn't handle. And that's, to me, that was the message. It's like, things will come against you, things will hurt you, things are going to damage you, but you will recover, and they will be destroyed. Because God is for us. We who believe on him. I'm persuaded that nothing can separate us from the love of God, we who love him. We who he's shown us grace that we could love him. And all things are working together for our good. We're going to go over a bit because I'm sorry if anyone's schedule's like 7 to 8. It's over. Well, you can come back and listen later. That's the cool thing about this. The studies go up. They're live now, but they can be studied later. Or maybe I should save it for next time. Maybe I should be strict about that. Yeah, let's see. They look for good. How many more verses do I have to cover? That's a lot of verses. I don't want to run over them in a few moments. I like ending here on this verse. So we will conclude with verse 12. The inhabitants of Maroth, and let's see one more time. No questions. Thank you for not. I like questions. I do. I just thank you for understanding what I'm trying to say. What do you mean by that? I'm glad that it is not confusing. Waited carefully for good, but evil came down. If we know our God, and we have eyes wide open, we don't have to be like that. We will look for good of God, but we got to ask him for the right things. A lot of times we think good means carnal prosperity, You know, we want to have peace by having nothing wrong in our lives. You know, I just want to have peace. I want to have no problems. You know, I just want to, you know, I want to have no financial difficulties, and I don't want to work either. I want to have, I want to have peace with my spouse, but I don't want to change the things in my behavior that bring disunity between us. You know, I want her to accept me, you know, or him to accept me as I am. But I don't want to look closely at myself and change. You know, whereas the good, you want good from God, you can say, Lord, how might I, in the midst of turmoil, have peace? I want to be peace. I'm not going to ask you to change the world around me. I'm going to ask you to change me so that I can better endure the troubles and challenges of the world. I'm going to, you know, I want to find work so I can work with my hands and just be paid for my labor. I want to find, you know, peace with my spouse by being able to live up to your holy standards so that I might inspire love and admiration from them. So let's look for the good that is good in the sight of God. If we ask for things that he knows are good, you know, like Jesus said, if he asks a fish, will he give him a serpent? But if God loves you and you ask for a serpent, he won't give you one. You know? If you ask for the devil's playthings, he's not going to say, sure, here, have it. Though that's not absolute. You know, sometimes people get delivered to Satan. That's written in the New Testament. Deliver them to Satan. I mean, let them go over to the things. They seem so enamored with the things of the world, the things of the devil. Let them go to him and see how he treats you. Because sometimes that's the only way, you know, through the destruction of the flesh, that the soul may be saved. You know, if sometimes, you know, like they say, you got to hit rock bottom first. And that was true when I was in college. I had to sort of come to a place where I thought I was going to die before I started turning to God, because all of a sudden it's like there was no. I knew I couldn't help myself, so who would help me? God. Or that's what I thought. I said, God, help me. I've done bad things to myself. I've done bad. So we concluded verse 12. Like I said, you can find all my studies on oraclesofgod.org. I have another YouTube channel, and remember to subscribe. And that's about it. So thank you for joining me in this study. I look forward to studying with you again same time tomorrow, continuing in the book of Micah.